Hello everyone. Welcome back to another video on my Storytime channel. So I'm going to continue reading They Shook Hands, Year 1, and I left off at Chapter 13. Yeah, Chapter 12 I finished last time, so Chapter 13 we're up to of They Shook Hands, Year 1. Okay, let's read it then. They Shook Hands, Year 1, Chapter 13, The Mirror. After the Christmas feast, Harry and Draco went outside to go sledding, sliding down the hill onto the lake over and over until their legs had turned to rubber, and their cheeks were rosy with the cold. Dinner was a casual affair of turkey sandwiches, crumpets, trifle, and Christmas cake. Back in the common room, they sipped hot chocolate, and Draco began teaching Harry how to play wizard chess. That night, after Draco had fallen asleep, Harry sat in bed wide awake. He couldn't sleep. He still wondered who had sent him the invisibility cloak. He pulled down and held onto it. It was smoother than silk, light as air. This had belonged to his father. Forget how rare they were. Forget how costly it had been his father's. He had to try it out. Now, he slipped out of bed and pulled it around his shoulders. Where he should have seen his legs, he saw only moonlit shadows. It was a queer feeling. You know what it said? Use it well. And invisibility cloak was used to become invisible. He started realization. A bowl of Hogwarts stolen to him in his cloak. Excitement flooded through him as he stood there in darkness and silence. He could go anywhere with this cloak, anywhere at all, and Filch would never know. Draco mumbled something in his sleep. Should Harry wake him? No, he decided. Not the first time. Not with this cloak that belonged to his father. This time, the first time he wanted to go alone. He quietly left the room and walked down the corridor to the common room. He bolted across the room and out through the stone wall. Where should he go? He didn't know. He walked randomly as silent as a ghost. He saw a few of the ghosts out and about, but he said nothing to them. He was near the library now. It was pitch black with the doors and very eerie. He looked in at the tall bookshelves that held so much knowledge, but it hadn't helped them discover the answers they needed. Flamel's name was nowhere to be found in the great wizards of the 20th century or notable magical names of our time. It was also missing from important modern magical discoveries and a study of recent developments in wizardry. There was only a few tomes that the library held among the thousands and thousands of books. Harry had been wondering for a time if they might ever find Flamel's name in the library. They dared not ask for help. In the library proper seemed like a fruitless task. That last phrase jangled around in his head. The library proper. Was it possible the information from Flamel was in the restricted section? He never looked there. He needed a specially assigned note from a teacher to even look at any of the restricted books. As soon as the idea occurred to him, he knew it must be correct. In his mind, he could picture the velvet robe that warded off the forbidden books in the back of the library. Did he dare? He was invisible. He grabbed for a lantern and lit the wick with the quick charm. Who's there? Came a voice. Filch. He'd seen the light. Harry dropped the lantern and ran. He might be invisible, but floating lantern was enough to make Filch suspicious, and he'd probably wake the headmaster. Filch's footsteps drew near, and Harry almost ran into him. He could see the caretaker's pale, wild eyes searching in the darkness, but they glided right over Harry. He ran as silently as he could manage. He came to a sudden halt near a tall suit of armor. He had been so busy getting away from Filch that he hadn't paid any attention to where he was going. It was like the night of the duel all over again. The darkness made it impossible for him to tell where he was. There was a suit of armor near the kitchens, he knew, but he was at least 5 floors above there. Glad I found you, Professor. Professor Snape asked me to let him know if anyone was wandering around at night, but you'll do just as well. It seems someone's in a bed and tried to get into the library. I found this lantern dropped on the floor and the wick was still burning. I've no doubt he ran for fear of his life. Harry felt the blood drain out of his face. Wherever he was, Filch must know his shortcut because the soft, greasy voice was getting nearer. To his complete shock, it was Professor Quirrell's startling voice that answered, "Lantern? Library? Probably an older student trying to raid the restricted section. I tell them they're not ready, but they are young, and I think they are immortal. Quirrell." Sure enough, the professor and Filch came around the corner, and Harry stood rooted to his spot. They couldn't see him, of course, but it was a narrow corridor, and if they came much closer to him, they crashed into him for sure. He wasn't material, after all. We'll catch them, oh yes, and we'll catch them. Hang them up in the dungeons and let them have a good screaming, we will, oh yes. He backed away as quickly as quietly as he could. He could see a door ajar to his left. He would have to be squeezed through it, thankful for being skinny, and easy door shut behind him as they walked away. After they walked away, listen to their footsteps fade away. That had been too close for comfort. The room looked like an unused classroom, of which there were dozens around the school. The dark shapes of desks and chairs were piled against the walls, and there was an upturned waste paper basket. None of that mattered when he saw the highly unusual object in the room. It looked out of place, as though it were just here because there was nowhere else to put it. It was a magnificent mirror, as high as the ceiling, with an ornate gold frame, standing on 2 clawed feet. There was an inscription carved around the top: "Arise, stra eru oit ubi kafru oit on washi." Now that Filch and Whirl had walked away, his panic was fading, his natural curiosity was growing. What was this mirror? Why was it here? He stepped closer, wanting to look at himself from under the cloak. He stood in front of it and gasped. Harry had to clap his hands to his mouth to keep from screaming. He spun around, staring wildly into the shadows. His heart was in his throat for the mirror. In the mirror, he was not alone. He saw no one. The room was empty. He took a deep breath, slow breath, trying not to hyperventilate. He turned back to the mirror. There he was, looking pale and frightened. Also there, reflecting in the space behind him, were at least 10 other people. Harry looked over his shoulder, but he was still alone. Were they all invisible too? Was he going mad? What trick was this? He looked back at the mirror. A woman was standing right behind his reflection. She smiled and waved at him. He reached out his hand and felt only the empty air. If she was truly there, he should have felt her. So close they were standing in the mirror. He felt nothing. She and the others existed only in the mirror. She was a very pretty woman. She had dark red hair, and her eyes were just like his. He leaned closer to the mirror. Their eyes were bright green, identical in shape, but she was crying. She smiled at him, but she cried nonetheless. The tall, thin, black-haired man sitting next to her put his arm around her. The man wore glasses, and his hair was very untidy. He stuck up at the back just as Harry's did. The jawline, the cheekbones, all identical. Mommy whispered, not daring to believe it. Dad? They did not answer. They only watched him smiling. Harry saw pride on both their faces. He felt weak all of a sudden. He looked at the other faces in the mirror. Here he saw a pair of green eyes, where he saw a nose like his own, a little old man at the back, even had Harry's knobby knees. He could have wept. He was looking at his family for the first time in his life. The Potter family smiled and waved at him, and he stared hungrily back at them. His hands pressed flat against the glass. Would that he could have passed through to reach them. He felt a terrible ache inside of him, half joy, half terrible sadness. How long had he stayed there, we cannot have said. The reflections did not fade and kept him company until a distant noise brought him out and back to his senses. He couldn't stay here. He had to get back to the dungeons. He tore his eyes from his mother's wistful face with a sort of wrenching agony. He pulled the cloak about his shoulders, and he saw his father wink at him. A tear rolled on Harry's cheek. I'll come back, he promised, and he fled the room before he lost his strength. He ran as quickly as silently as he could. It took him several minutes to even figure out where he was. He took the quickest way back to the dorm as he could find, praying he wouldn't run into Filch or Quirrell again. When he was back in the dungeons, Professor Snape's domain, he breathed a sigh of relief. He was safe. He slid back to the blank stone wall and stumbled inside, falling back against the wall as it closed behind him. He was home free. Physically worn out, emotionally drained, and emotionally absolutely exhausted, Harry collapsed onto his bed. He wanted to wake Draco and tell him all about the mirror. Just gotta catch my breath first. When he opened his eyes, the sun was shining brightly through the picture window. He neglected to close his curtains last night. How careless. He glanced over to see that Draco's bed was empty. He sat up. Harry sat up. He had to find Draco. Had to tell him about the mirror. His parents. The door to the dorm opened, and Draco sauntered in. Good morning, he said casually. You might be able to make breakfast if you run. Draco, Harry exclaimed. His friend frowned him slightly. Yes, but he's passed 11 years, 6 months, and 19 days. Harry jumped 6 months and 19 days. Harry jumped up from the bed and grabbed Draco in a hug. Draco sputtered and stepped back. You're off. Harry, what's gone into you? Draco, Harry exclaimed again. I made the most incredible discovery last night. Did you go for a walk in the new cloak of yours? Draco demanded, quickly putting two and two together. Harry nodded rapidly. Wound up by the library where I was about to go looking through the research section for Nicholas Flamel, but Filch came by before I could look, and I ran away. But he took some shortcut because he found Professor Quirrell. They were searching for me, so I ran and wound up in this room. There was this mirror, and he took a deep breath. I saw my parents. Draco's jaw dropped. You saw your parents, he said, completely stunned. Were they alive? Harry shook his head quickly. No, I could only see them in the mirror. I could see myself, but they were standing right behind me. I saw other people too. I think there were the rest of my family because I saw people with my eyes, my nose, my face. I have a family, Draco. His hands were shaking. Draco clasped his shoulders. Harry, that's wonderful. I'm happy for you, mate. They look so proud of me, he said wistfully, urging his mother's happy tears and unmistakable look on his father's face. I'm not alone anymore. Oh, they're not here, but I feel them now. I feel like I know them. Draco squeezed Harry's shoulders tightly. He didn't say anything else. The look on Harry's face said it all. I'm going back tonight, he said, his mind made up. You can come along if you like. Draco shook his head. Oh no more adventures. I already told you that. Suit yourself. Harry wasn't the least bit bothered. All he could think about was the coming night in the mirror that showed him his family. He didn't go up to try to catch breakfast. They went up to lunch. He didn't eat anything. Draco suggested going to the library and continue the search for Flamel. Harry thought it was a waste of time. To ideas of playing chess, playing gobstones, and going sledding, he took no interest. He was going to go back to the mirror tonight. That was the important thing. When the bell tolled midnight, he pulled invisibly out from under his bed and wrapped around his thin shoulders. So you're going, Draco said flatly. He hadn't said anything about Harry's plan against Harry's plan all day. Now he seemed to have found his tongue. You can't stop me, Draco, Harry said emotionlessly. You can't stop me, Draco, Harry said emotionally. I don't want to stop you, Draco told him. This is your parents we're talking about. I have no illusions about persuading you not to go, but someone's got to look out for you. That someone is me. Harry smiled gratefully. Thanks, Draco. I knew I could count on you. Aw, heck, Draco drawled. You're going to make me blush. So they walked off, both of them under the invisibility cloak. It was slower going, since they had to walk in step. It took a bit, but they were eventually able to synchronize. It helped Draco would hum very softly, and the melody kept them in line. Harry tried to retrace his route from the library, but must have forgotten to turn somewhere because they wandered around for nearly an hour. This is getting us nowhere, Draco declared quietly. You're obviously missed a turn somewhere, but we've been walking forever. We'll try again tomorrow. No, Harry hissed. I know it's here somewhere. They saw the ghost of a tall witch gliding in the opposite direction, but we saw nothing else. Just as Draco was mentioning it, his feet were developing blisters, Harry spotted the suit of armor. It's here, right over here. There's the door. They pushed the door open, ducked inside, and shoved it closed. Harry flung off the cloak and ran to the mirror. His mother and father weren't there, and they beamed at the sight of him. There they are, he said softly. See? I can't see anything, Draco told him. Look, right there. There's so many of them. I can only see you, Draco said. Looking properly, Harry said, Draco to the place where he was standing. His family vanished, all he could see reflected in the glass was Draco in his dressing gown. Draco's eyes widened. You see them, Harry cheered. Draco stared wide-eyed into the mirror. Look at me, he whispered. What do you see, Harry asked him. Do you see your family? It's me, Draco breathed. I'm older, though. I look like Elon, but I'm not perfect like him. I'm Quidditch captain. You're there, too. Slytherin Star Seeker. There's Millie and Theo, and we're all chasers. We stomped Gryffindor on the ground and taking the Quidditch Cup. Weasley's lying on the pitch, bawling his eyes out. Harry didn't know what this meant. It showed him his family, but it showed Draco a vision of the future. It made no sense. Move over, he said. I want to look again. You had it all last night, Draco said, not budging. You're just holding the Quidditch Cup, Harry argued. What's interesting about that? I'm watching Weasley bleed out his life onto the grass. Draco was standing deep into the mirror. I want to see my parents. Harry stepped closer, ready to shove his friend out of the way. The ache in his chest was back. Don't shove me. A sudden noise in the corridor put an end to their discussion. Scarcely daring to breathe, Harry realized they had been talking very loudly. Under the cloak, Draco snapped, grabbing for it. They were just in time as luminous eyes of Miss Norris came around the door. Harry cursed himself. Why had they left the door open? Draco and Harry stood quite still, trying just for that to make a sound. The invisibility cloak would work on cats. She stared into the darkness for what seemed like ages. Then, without so much as a sound, she turned and left. She went for Filch, Draco said at once. We're not safe here. Back to the dorm at once. He grabbed old Harry's sleeve and tugged his friend from the room. The snow was still falling the next morning. Harry hadn't slept well. All he could think about was the mirror. Draco watched his friend throughout the day, knowing that Harry was reticent. Harry, you want to play chess? You were doing very well the other day. He hadn't been. No thanks. Harry's voice is listless. No thanks. Harry's voice is listless. Gobstones? No. You're thinking about that mirror, aren't you? Draco accused him. You're going back there tonight. Maybe. Draco sat down on Harry's bed. I think that's a mistake, he said, looking directly at Harry. Filch is out there. Mrs. Norris too. You said the Quirrell was wandering around. You heard Filch say the professor Snape has an interest in knowing who's out of bed. Harry, trust me. Going out of the dorm again tonight is a bad idea. Stay here. Harry shook his head. Draco had parents. He couldn't possibly know what it meant to Harry to see his family. He was going back to the mirror tonight. Draco kept a close watch on him all day. When the bell finally told curfew, Harry reached out his bed and pulled out his cloak. He was about to pull over his head when Draco clamped a head on his forearm. This is a bad idea, Harry, Draco said. You're risking detention, losing points, and shaming the house. You're not thinking. Remember what Snape said about having good reasons for the things we do? Harry shook his friend's hands off. I'm going, was all he said before he pulled the cloak on and vanished. Harry, damn it, Harry. Draco groped in the air, trying to catch hold of the cloak. Harry ignored him and slipped out of the common room into the corridor. He found his way more quickly than the night before. He was walking rapidly and making noise, but he didn't meet anyone. So as long as he could stop sound whenever he encountered someone, they could probably think it was a ghost or Peeves or something else. His mother and father were smiling at him again when he stepped up to the mirror. One of his grandfathers just waved at him, and Harry sat down and sit on the floor. There was nothing to stop him from staying here all night with his family. He could be blissful now. So back again, Harry? The voice startled him, and the Velocity sides turned to ice. He turned to look at him behind him and saw Professor Dumbledore sitting on one of the desks by the wall. Harry must have walked right past him without noticing, so desperate he had been to get to the mirror. Good evening, sir. I didn't see you there. Strange, isn't it, how being invisible can make you nearsighted, the headmaster said, and Harry was relieved to see that the old man was smiling. He got up from the desk and sank down to sit next to Harry on the floor. I see that you, like so many other hundreds before you, have discovered the wonders of the Mirror of Arise. Is that what the script on its top says, sir? Dumbledore nodded. Very observant, Harry. Trust me, I know you figured out what this mirror does. It shows my family, sir, and yes, and your friend Draco, what did he see? He saw himself as Quidditch captain. We won the Quidditch Cup and the House Cup, too. Harry didn't understand where the old man was going with this. Now then, can you think of what it is that the Mirror of Arise shows us all? Dumbledore's face was very serious. Harry had no idea. He shook his head. Let me explain then. The happiest man in the world could look into this mirror and see only himself exactly as he is. For him, the mirror would be perfectly ordinary. Does that help? Harry thought. His forehead wrinkled in consternation. It shows us what we want, whatever we want. Almost, Dumbledore said gently. Spiritual is nothing more or less than the deepest and most desperate desire of our hearts. Draco Malfoy sees himself succeeding in a way that his older brother has not at Quidditch. He sees the the sport as a way to distinguish himself. You, Harry, have never known your family, so you see them standing all around you, proud of you. Harry's eyes filled with tears. What a cruel mirror. It wasn't real, any of it. He wanted to cry, but Dumbledore was still talking. This mirror gives neither the wisdom nor truth, Harry. Men have wasted away staring into this mirror. They become entranced by what they see. Others have been driven mad, not knowing if what they see is real or even possible. Oh yeah, so that's part 1 of They Shook Hands Year 1. Take care, everybody.